Give me a thumbs up that you can hear me. Thumbs up. Okay. So good morning, everybody. I'm Kristen Hall. I'm a registered dietitian with Energize Nutrition and with the I Am Wellness Clinic. And I'm super excited to be here to talk about cooking skills for a healthy spring. Today, we're going to focus on working with plant-based ingredients that really can help foods taste good and also have that layer of healthfulness in it. There's sort of three main things I really want you to get out of our session today. The first is that eating more plant-based foods can really support our body's natural appetite regulation system. And so that's important because it really helps us to eat when we're hungry and then stop when we feel satisfied. We also know that having those flavorful meals comes from layering in different cooking techniques. And when we do that, we get really good tasting food. And that's important because when we have good tasting food, we feel more satisfied. And when we feel satisfied, now we have an eating pattern that helps us feel like, hey, I can do this. Like, this is my lifestyle. It's not a diet. And then the third thing I would love for you to get out of this today is that using different cooking methods with vegetables is actually what helps them to taste good. And that's important because, as of course you've been learning, there's lots of nutrition and phytonutrients within all these different colorful gems. I also like to refer to cooking as kind of like a practice. So just like when you go to one yoga class, like, you don't instantly become flexible, but when you go to a yoga class and kind of develop a bit of a practice, you get more flexible over time. And the same thing happens with cooking. The more you just get a little bit of experience in the kitchen and actually incorporate some basic cooking skills, it becomes easier. And that allows you to have a bit more freedom in the kitchen, because if you feel confident in like your knife skills, if you feel confident to throw together meals in like 15 minutes, now you're eating foods that are a little bit better for you, and you're probably saving a whole bunch of money by not eating out or going to some of these takeout places. So I really believe that cooking is that practice. There's my phone right there. Okay, so on the menu today, I'm not sure if anyone's actually cooking along with me, and if you are, maybe just let me know in the chat if you are. Otherwise, I'll just carry on with this as being a demonstration. We're doing sort of four main recipes. The first is a spring power grain bowl that's going to have a spring dill vinaigrette as well as a Pico De Gallo. And then we're going to finish off with a ginger fried pear. And I'm really excited because these are all things that I think have a lot of flexibility. When I choose the recipes, I'm actually really quite strategic in terms of what I want to show you with these different cooking methods, these different cooking ingredients. And I actually tried to choose ingredients that I thought were maybe a little bit more familiar to you and to all of us. So recipes are that platform through which a culinary technique is expressed. And so I think that's really important. And I'll explain what that means for each of the recipes. Because when you understand the cooking technique that is the foundation of a recipe, now you've got freedom in the kitchen, because you can start looking at, well, we're doing a vinaigrette, and that's a fat, acid, sweet, and salt. So now that you know that, you can use any fat, you could use any acid, you could use any flavorizing salty ingredient, and you can use a variety of different sweets. So I think that's a really exciting thing. You use the foods you have available, the foods that you prefer. Okay, so the first recipe I thought we'd make is the spring power grain bowl. So I'm just going to get my water ready here because I'm going to obviously cook the quinoa. So I find quinoa usually near the rice section in any grocery store, and it is a whole grain, and it is gluten-free if that's important to you. But this is, as a whole grain, what that means is it's got the whole kernel of the grain. So it's got the endosperm, which has the the carbohydrate, but it's also got the bran layer, which has lots of fiber in it. It slows down how fast our body absorbs that. And it also has the germ layer, which has more phytonutrients in it. It also has some vitamin E and various other nutrients. So when we have that whole grain, I'm sure you've heard all that before, you know, we all need to eating more whole grains. That's a really important part of carbohydrates, and is part of the Mediterranean dietary approach, because what whole grains do is they slow the rise in our blood sugars, we get long lasting energy, and we actually feel more like it's hard to overeat on these, because like you get really full. And if say you had a larger portion of these grains, you're going to be full for quite some time. So they really support our body's natural appetite regulation system. So quinoa, it's grown in Peru, and often it's got something on it called saponins, which if you don't rinse those off, quinoa will taste bitter. It's going to taste kind of like soap, which we don't want. Now, this particular quinoa that I bought has already been pre-rinsed, and it tells me that right on the package. So if the package of quinoa that you've already purchased, as long as it says pre-rinsed, you don't need to rinse it. But otherwise, I would just put this in a colander, like whatever amount you're cooking, put it in a colander and just rinse it under the tap water just for, I don't know, 30 seconds or something. And that will help it to taste good. Now, I always say if you can cook rice, you can cook quinoa. It's basically the same thing. It's about a 2-to-1 ratio of liquids to grain. So today I'm just going to use water as the cooking liquid, but this is where you can easily add in layers of flavor. You could cook this in a bone broth, a vegetable stock that you can just buy from the store. You, of course, can make your own, but let's be real, for people who are really busy, sometimes just buying that from the store is just a lot easier. So you can cook this in a broth, and that will add in a layer of more savory flavor. If you wanted to cook this for a breakfast, in addition to water, you could incorporate maybe some like apple juice or something like that, and that would just give it a layer of like a little bit of sweetness in the background. So if you can cook rice, you can cook quinoa. So I'm gonna just move that aside and just check on so I've had this sort of preheating before. So I'm going to, I had 2 cups of water in there, and I'm just going to add in the 1 cup of quinoa. Give that a bit of a stir, turn my heat down. Sorry about that. Cover that up. And then I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to have my tech person set a timer for 15 minutes. Actually, set it for 12 minutes, please. We'll set it for 12, and that way we'll check in a minute at 12 and make sure we're not not so much overcooking it, but make sure we haven't lost all our liquid. So that's how easy was that? It's something as simple as the way you cook rice. So we want to get the rice prepared, or the quinoa prepared. That's in progress. Now what we're going to do is get our black beans, our avocado, frozen corn, and romaine hearts prepared. So I basically jumped right in, and what I haven't told you is that we're going to be building these power grain bowls. And what I love about grain bowls is that they allow a lot of freedom and flexibility, I think, in the kitchen to allow people to choose the ingredients that they most prefer. So for people with children in their lives, or young adults in their lives, or different food preferences, what's great about these grain bowls is everyone gets to build their own. And so if you want to add in more, say, black beans, you can do that. But for the folks that are maybe a little bit more skeptical, or who don't prefer that kind of protein, then they could use something else. So that's why I really love this method. It works really well if you're interested in sort of that meal preparation strategy. So let's start with the black beans. I have already opened this up. And what I'm going to do is just drain these. Black beans or any kind of legume. So you actually could substitute any legume that you have. But black beans, why I love these is that they are a plant-based protein. They are very rich in soluble fiber. Soluble fiber is important for all of us. And it's especially helpful for people who may be dealing with maybe high insulin levels or high blood sugars or high cholesterol, because what the soluble fiber is, it really slows down how fast those blood sugars rise and fall. So it's got that kind of effect on our blood sugars. And then as it relates to cholesterol lowering, what soluble fiber does is it helps to trap bile acids. And then we excrete those. And because we need to make more bile acids, then what happens is we need to use cholesterol to make those bile acids. So that's just a little bit of technical detail that I'm not sure if you really wanted to know that, but there is a lot of science behind the nutritional recommendations that we offer. So I have drained these, and these should be rinsed underneath some just free-flowing water for about 2 minutes. And what that does is it helps to reduce up to 40% of the sodium off the black beans or any canned legumes. So if you're feeling like you're really watching your sodium, you can definitely cook black beans or any legume from dry. It takes a little bit more effort, and I'm totally confident you could do that. But I'm just trying to be really like practical in terms of, you know, busy working people. You know what, it's totally fine to use the canned. I would just rinse them, and just for purposes of just staying in the camera, I'm gonna skip that part of it. But just rinsing them, something as simple as rinsing them helps to reduce that sodium. So I'm going to just put these in a bowl, because then when we're ready to assemble our grain bowl later on, everyone will just get to scoop out what they need. Now, I know in the recipe it just said a cup of black beans, and of course I use the whole can. You can see this is a cooking method. It's not so much an exact recipe. Okay, so we have our black beans. The next thing I'm going to grab here is my avocado. So I bought all the ingredients Wednesday night. And when it comes to working with avocados, you kind of want to have your ingredients purchased ahead of time, because sometimes you can find avocados that are actually ready and ripe to use. Otherwise, they're like quite firm and they're not a lot of fun to work with. So when I'm working with avocado, I'm going to just go around here and just go around the whole avocado with my knife, and then just sort of turn it like that, and boom, we've got it. It's worked. So now what I'm going to do is just sort of slice it. Whenever you're working with knives, you want to be really, really careful that you're not obviously injuring yourself. So I'm going to, you saw that I just slid those in, and now I'm just going to take my spoon. Oh, I didn't get it all the way in. Take my spoon and pull that out. So avocados are rich in a kind of fat called monounsaturated fat, and it's a solid source of fat. So these are wonderful in vinaigrettes. They're wonderful to eat as well. They're nutritionally dense, and so we want to be mindful of the quantity that we might be eating. But these are, again, foods. This is rich in fat and fiber. So it's a really good source of fiber. And so again, you're going to feel satisfied when you eat that. So then in terms of getting this pit out, always keeping my non-knife hand out of the way. I'm just gonna kind of go like that. We'll try it again, a little harder. And just pull it out like that. Now, let's say you only wanted to use half the avocado, store it with the pit in place, because that helps to, I guess, just to keep it fresh. Move that back over there. Okay, and then, again, we're gonna do the same thing that we did here before. Just going all the way in. I wanna make sure you can see that. Holding that up. You can hear our quinoa bubbling away, cooking away. And then just grab my knife. So a fresh avocado, you know, you can use these in smoothies. And if you're skeptical of what that's going to taste like, you hardly taste it. And in fact, what I find with smoothies is that avocados add in that creaminess factor, much like a banana would. You can use fresh avocado. You could use frozen avocado. Or you could use bananas in your smoothies. And then, so their avocados are a lot like an apple. They're going to brown unless we cover them with a little bit of acid. So what I'm going to do is I've just got an extra lime here. I know I didn't say this in the recipe, but I'm going to just pour a little bit of acid coming from some lime juice. And just pour that over top just to prevent the enzymatic browning of our avocado. It's not that that would hurt anything, it just doesn't look very nice. Okay, so just sort of cover that up. I've sliced it. You certainly could put it into chunks. So I'm going to just move that aside for now until we're ready to start building our bowl. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, the next ingredient I'm going to use is frozen corn, which I've already pre-measured out. But what I love about frozen vegetables in general is that they're really great for busy weeknights. And if you've never looked in the grocery store, they have tons of options. So I actually think about corn as more like a starch. That's how when I work with people, I encourage people to think of corn more like a starchy vegetable than necessarily than just a regular vegetable. But what I love about this is that it's fast, it's easy, it's often liked by different people in the family. So I'm going to pop that over here. And again, when we're ready to build our grain bowl, we'll have everything. Now what we're going to do is get some romaine lettuce. And again, I chose romaine lettuce because I'm looking for ingredients that maybe feel a little bit more everyday. When we think about plant-based lifestyles and just healthy eating, I don't have a problem with kale. I like kale, but for some people, that's just not where they feel ready to start or even ever want to go to, or maybe they don't even like it. So I chose to use some romaine lettuce. Now you can buy this sort of pre-done for you, pre-shredded, and that can be a fabulous time saver for people. But it's also, it doesn't take much to actually chop it yourself. So I've already washed this and I've dried it. It is important to dry your greens because you will want the dressing to be able to stick to the leaf. And I'm just gonna break it down like that. You could do this with your hands and just simply break it apart. I'm gonna use my knife today. And so romaine lettuce, it is considered a dark leafy green vegetable. Other dark leafy green veggies that you could use, of course, are things like spinach or bok choy or Swiss chard. So there's kale, of course. You can use all kinds of veggies, dark leafy greens. And I think the most important thing to remember is use ones that you enjoy the taste of, because if you're eating food you like, this will become more of a sustainable lifestyle rather than choking back food that you don't really care for. So, I've got lots in there. That's going to overflow. I'm just going to move this maybe over there behind the scenes, and we'll worry about that later. So I'm just going to pop that over there. We'll come back to that. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to prepare our shrimp, but we're not going to cook it just yet. And the reason behind that is fish, you want to have it come off that come off the grill. Oops. I think that might be right. You want to have your fish come off the grill and kind of go into being eaten right away. Okay, how do I know that's ready? First of all, I could hear it. I could hear it sort of drying up in there. If I were to taste this, I know that this would be cooked as well. So it's just like rice, like it sort of absorbs the water in it. So that's already done. Now I'm going to keep it off the heat because we don't need it to cook anymore. So I'll just move this over here and we will worry about cooking that later. Okay, and we had 10 seconds left in our timer. So 12 minutes was right. So the package said 15 minutes to cook. I cooked it in 12 minutes, so it's actually faster. So that's part of live and learn in the kitchen. Okay, so with this shrimp, I'll show you the package. I just got this, I think I got this at Safeway or Sobeys. It's uncooked Pacific white shrimp. It's 340 grams, so I used the whole bag. I just thawed it in underneath some running water. And so this is all raw. And it says that it's raw because it says it's uncooked on the package, but you can see it, it's not pink at all. This is a really lean source of protein. So in 3 ounces, it's got lots of protein without a lot of fat in it. So super lean. And it can just be nice from a nice break from chicken, maybe some beef. So it's a nice way of adding in just variety and adding some seafood into your diet. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this is, let me just have a look what we're doing. Combining the shrimp with the oil, garlic powder, cayenne pepper, salt, and pepper. Okay, so let me just grab my oil. Okay, so I'm using an extra virgin olive oil. Extra virgin olive oil is loaded in polyphenols, which have an antioxidant component. So I'll talk more about that maybe with the next recipe. Okay, so a tablespoon. I'll show you. There is a tablespoon. Like, it doesn't really matter as much for cooking as it does for baking. But on the other hand, this is a brand new bottle of olive oil, and if I just dump it, it may glug there. So we don't quite need that much. So I'm just going to make sure that all of this shrimp is coated in a little bit of oil, just to help it. It's going to add ability for the spices to stick. And then I've already got some garlic powder and cayenne pepper pre-measured. You don't want to watch me measure, but these are just from like part of my spice drawer or whatever in my pantry. And so I'm just going to sprinkle it all over. Now I am using the cayenne pepper. That's going to make it add in some heat. So if you feel like, I don't like heat, I don't like a lot of like spice, it kind of gives heat at the back of the throat. That's what makes food a little bit interesting, but if that's not your style of eating, then you can totally leave that out. And I think I've listed in the ingredients there that it is optional. And then I'm just going to add in a little bit of pepper and a little bit of salt. This is a sea salt that I like to use. Sea salt doesn't necessarily have much iodine in it. So we do want to make sure that you're getting a good source of iodine in your diet. We can talk more about that. Okay, so I think for now, I'm going to pause on this recipe because then I want to make the vinaigrette and I'm going to make the Pico De Gallo, and then we'll come back, cook this up so that we have that we have everything all ready. Okay, so I'm going to move this over to the side. If that's going to be out for any period of time, we should put it in the fridge, but we're going to be ready to use it pretty quickly here. Okay, so the next, does anyone have any questions before we move forward? Okay, I'm going to just carry on, and I'm going to go to the spring dill vinaigrette. Now, I have no trouble with people using store-bought vinaigrettes, store-bought salad dressings. They can be a time saver. But when you look at the ingredient list of those store-bought dressings, depending on which one you're buying, sometimes they have like quite an ingredient list, and some of those things over time may not be in best support of our health. So I wanted to teach you how to make your own vinaigrette. And when you understand how to do a vinaigrette, you have way more freedom in the kitchen. So I'm just going to move these guys over here and pull up my ingredients here. So I think I've already told you, when you're making a vinaigrette, it is a combination of fat, acid, sweet, and salt. That's the basic list of ingredients that comes together for that. So the fat that we're using here will be extra virgin olive oil. Now, when you talk to any chef, they always say, you know, it's the quality of your ingredients that really matters. And of course, that's totally true. And there are some amazing olive oil stores in this city. So I'm just using one that I bought from the everyday grocery store. But if you've never experimented with like a really, really good quality olive oil, wow, it's worth it. So I'm just going to measure out about a half a cup. So the fat that we're using here, of course, is the extra virgin olive oil. Extra virgin means it's coming from the first press of the olives, which means it's got lots of antioxidants in them. When we think about our bodies having inflammation, most of us at some point in our lives, just through wear and tear, we become more inflamed inside. So thinking about inflammation, kind of like a rusty car. Over time, as a car gets older with wear and tear, it might start to develop some rust. And so what antioxidants do is go in and kind of create like a new coat of paint just to make that car shiny and new. And so that's how I think about inflammation in our bodies, is that we're rusty inside, and antioxidants can really, really help with that fresh coat of paint, helping to reduce that inflammation. Thank you for the great tip on how to remove the bitter taste from the quinoa. Oh, you're so welcome, Suzanne. You're so welcome. Okay, so the vinaigrette, the fat is the extra virgin olive oil. Other things you could use is like a grapeseed oil, maybe a cold pressed canola oil. So there's a variety of fats. You could use some avocado. So we're using just an extra virgin olive oil here. So fat, acid. The acid here is going to be red wine vinegar. So again, acids, when you think of that, it could be red wine vinegar, white wine vinegar, apple cider vinegar, champagne vinegar. Can also be citrus. So it could be lemon juice, lime juice, rice wine vinegar. So you can see how it really can get, you have a lot of freedom in the kitchen when you start thinking about this, is what's the formula? And usually it's about, in traditional French cooking, it's 3 parts oil to 1 part acid. I tend to reduce that because I don't quite like that ratio. So I usually do like a 2-part fat to 1 part other ingredients. So I'm gonna 2 to 2.5. Anyways, I've got the recipe there for you. And it's about 2 tablespoons. So that's sort of 1. Oops. And that's about another 1. Now, whenever you're cooking, we should be tasting as we cook. And that way we can adjust things to our flavor preferences. So fat, acid, sweet. I think in your recipe, I suggested just like a granulated white sugar, but again, you could use sugar, brown sugar. I'm actually going to use honey. You know, somebody said to me the other day, something that really resonated with me, and that is white sugar is actually thinking about it more as an additive than an actual food. And I thought, oh, that's a really interesting way to think about things, because if I want you to have food you enjoy. And the way I think about sugar is, what's the least amount you need to enjoy? So in terms of calorie-wise, honey versus sugar, it's all about the same. But anyways, I'm gonna just use a honey, fat, acid, sweet, salt. So I'll add a little bit of sea salt there. Okay, now I'm supposed to be using 2 cups of dill. And when I was recipe testing this, I found dill. And when I went to buy groceries, I couldn't find dill. They didn't have it in the store. And I thought, you know, do I go around the different stores and buy some more dill? Or do I model what do you do in that case? And so I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna use what I have, what I can find. And so I found mint. So normally I'd be using dill, But today I'm using mint because that's what I could find in the store. You could use dill, you could use basil, you could use parsley, you could use any of the fine herbs like this. But what's amazing, and you could combine them too, you could use a whole bunch of them. So it says about 2 cups of fresh dill. So I don't know, I'll just make sure I've got about 2 cups there. Honestly, I don't usually measure for these kinds of things, but you know, maybe I should, just to make sure I get a good product, because I have recipe tested this, and this is just really fresh. What's awesome about these fresh herbs is that they're loaded in antioxidants as well. So, you know, adding in parsley and fresh herbs is part of my usual grocery list. You know, often you see parsley used as a garnish, and some of these things used as a garnish. But these are actually things that if you were to chop them up really small, these are glorious in just even a green salad. It just adds in that like freshness in the background. Other ways I like to use fresh herbs are things like smoothies. So if you add in like especially fresh mint, fresh mint in a smoothie is delicious. Even parsley though, parsley in a fresh smoothie, it just adds in a layer of freshness, a bit of pungency. So I'm gonna just throw this in here. The fresh dill, we've got oil, so a little bit of onion. Now, so where does this fit with my fat, acid, sweet, salt? I'd say this actually fits more in the flavoring. So fat, acid, sweet, salt, and flavor. So it says about 1/4. Now this is a pretty big yellow onion, so I'm gonna err on the side of maybe just adding in a little bit less, only because it is a big onion. But that's the freedom that you have when you're cooking. And I'm gonna just chop it up just to help my blender out. Fresh herbs also help your microbiome get healthy. Yes, excellent point, Dr. Remke, for sure, that the microbiome, the collection of not just bacteria, but fungus or fungi and yeast and various bugs, I guess, not just bacteria, but the viruses, and just the balance of all the microbiota that live inside us. This helps to feed sort of the quote unquote, the good bacteria. Okay, garlic clove. So this is what a garlic bulb looks like. We're not going to use the whole bulb. We're just going to use the garlic clove. And if you wanted, you could use, I've seen garlic in a tube form. I've seen garlic in just the little jar form. And if that's what helps you use, you know, fresh aromatics in your diet, go for it. I think there's nothing quite like a fresh herb. I think it just tastes best. However, I just used up the rest of my garlic from a jar, but I do use it, and I have actually both in the house, just because we need to have options for busy weeknights, and sometimes just having a couple of key shortcuts can be really, really helpful in the kitchen. Okay, we got garlic, and then we've got a little bit of red pepper flake, which I have over here. And I am gonna add in, just to add in a little bit of, like, again, heat in the background. When people think about, you know, salads and veggies, they think like, oh, boring, like snore. But I think when we add in things like the red pepper flakes, it adds in more balance in the mouth and more interest to the eating experience. Okay, let me make sure I've got everything in there. And then I've got a little bit of water in there. You don't have to add in water. If you don't, it's going to be a little bit thicker of a dressing. So having recipe tested this, I'm going to just thin it out with a little bit of water. You could use other forms of light liquid in there as well. You could use even like a cooled green tea. That would be a really interesting way of adding in just a bit like a whole layer of antioxidants in there, as well as just getting in some liquid. Okay, so I'm supposed to add in a little bit of pepper. I think I missed that, so I'll just pop that in. And so this is more detailed than it needs to be, but I just wanted to show you that, again, fat, acid, sweet, salt, and then of course flavor. Flavor is something that really helps you to add it in. Okay, I'm going to turn this on. It's going to get loud in here, so just maybe cover your ears. So before we serve that, I will give that another blend. And if I was going to consume this right away, I would definitely, I would let that blend a little bit longer, but you get the idea. So it can actually be faster. I mean, I'm talking a lot about the ingredients, which is possibly making me a little bit slower in the kitchen, but I'm sharing that with you because making your own vinaigrettes actually is something that can take less than 5 minutes. The key thing is, do you have some staples in your pantry? And so just by planning out your kitchen a little bit more, having some basics, and when we get to actually work together, I'll share that all with you about what I think would be helpful. And then you ultimately get to decide what actually goes inside your kitchen. So does anyone have any questions about that?
And how long does the dressing last for?
I'd say about 5 days is sort of what they usually say with these kinds of things. But honestly, like when I look at that and I look at the ingredients and I've kept it all in the fridge, like I've had it last over a week, but I think sort of when I look up food safety guidelines, I think they usually say about 5 days. If you keep this in the fridge, what's likely to happen though is the olive oil will freeze, because even though it's in the fridge, the freezing point of the olive oil is higher than 0 degrees. And so it might freeze a bit, but you just shake it up, blend it up. And then this dressing, not only can you put it on a salad or a bowl, it's also a nice little dipping sauce for if you're going to fry up some fish, or if you're going to saute up some chicken. Like, it's just a way of adding in nice fresh flavor. So I think that's I think it's really versatile. And if you're trying to do things like doing maybe more of an Asian flair, you might use a different acid. You might use like the red wine, not the red wine, the rice wine vinegar. You might also add in some sesame oil. So different ingredients will be more reminiscent of different ethnic cuisines. This one is a little bit more generic, I would say. But also, I mean, you can see the theme here is a little bit more Mexican inspired. How long does the dressing last for? Yeah. So as I said, I've kept it for over a week before. Okay, I'm just gonna move this out of the way and then grab my next set of ingredients for the Pico De Gallo. Okay, how are we doing for time? Okay, good. Okay, let me just move that. So Pico De Gallo is also known as a salsa fresca, and back in the good old days when we were allowed to travel, very common ingredient found in Mexican cuisines. So we're going to start with having a couple of tomatoes, and I am using a Roma tomato. So I'm just gonna, so you can see here, I've got like, these tomatoes are quite, they're gonna roll around. Mitchell, would you mind just going down and telling them to stop, please? Thanks. So whenever I'm doing that, I always want to go down the middle. So now I've got a nice flat surface, and that just makes it much safer to use. And the other thing I'm going to do is they say to dice it. So I'm going to leave in the seeds and all like the jelly-like goo in there because it has lots of flavor. So How have I seen people do this? Actually, I'm going to go like that. So how I've seen people actually dice a tomato. There's lots of ways of working in the kitchen, by the way. You might be doing things that are a little different than how I'm doing them, and that's totally fine, because at the end of the day, we just got to get food in the kitchen and in our bellies. So I've just kind of gone through, and I am going to use this like that. And I'm using just a small paring knife. If you prefer to use a bigger knife, absolutely go for it. But this is the way I have found the dicing works really, really well. Now, tomatoes are a source of lycopene, which is a really powerful antioxidant. It usually becomes more bioavailable if it's being cooked, which we're leaving this as a raw salsa fresca. And I think you still get benefits from the tomato. But tomatoes, whether you were using a Roma tomato, an heirloom tomato, or even just grape tomatoes or cherry tomatoes, like anything really could work. I'm a big fan of those cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes, only because I refer to them as no prep veggies. So veggies that you can just grab and just use or snack on. Other no prep veggies that I really like are the baby cucumbers, the baby tomatoes, baby carrots, and snap peas, because you don't have to do anything to them. So I like to make sure I've got those, at least some of those, often many of those in my house for the week. Just, they're nice for fast, just chuck them in a bag, add them to either your lunches of some sort. You can have veggies raw, but you could also cook them or do different things with them. Like in this case, we're making a salsa, and this can be used as a topper for your bowl, but this is also lovely on top of a fish, on top of a grilled fish, on top of a grilled chicken. So you have lots of options with this. And so you're adding in flavor, you're adding in nutrition, and you're actually not adding in a ton of sodium. I don't actually have an issue with people adding a little bit of salt into their cooking. The sodium that I'm actually more concerned about is the sodium from processed foods, because it is in there. There's actually quite a bit. And even things like breads, which I do use, but breads are actually a pretty decent source of sodium, even though it doesn't taste salty. So not wanting to be I'm not the food cop. I always say that to people when I meet with them individually. I'm not here to be the food cop or take any joy out. But sometimes I just wonder, what would it be like to just experiment with different options that you didn't realize were even like a little bit healthier for you? The issue with processed foods is that they kind of bypass our natural appetite regulation system. They are designer foods. They've been designed with consumer taste preferences in mind, and not necessarily our biology. And so what happens is, something really like a highly processed food, something like potato chips. I like potato chips. I like the crunch. I like the salt. But the issue is that it's a combination of fat, sugar, and or salt, in that case, fat and salt, that our bodies they've not been evolved to handle. And so the issue with them is it's hard to stop. How do you know when you're done? Unless you've pre-portioned out an amount, you're done when the bag is gone. And you don't necessarily feel full the same way you're going to feel satisfied after eating this kind of meal. So processed foods are, I think we just want to be thinking about what's the least amount we need to enjoy. And that's why we do these cooking classes, because we know that that fresh home prepared foods more often is a key competency for having a healthful lifestyle. And sometimes when we're looking for what are some ways to What are some ways to have some shortcuts? I know depending on the grocery store you go to, even just heading by the deli, I know I've seen this at Sobeys, they have fresh salsas there. And I think, you know what, that's awesome. If you don't have time to make that yourself, like that's, you know, it's pre-done for you, but who cares? So just starting to become a little bit more flexible in our approaches with food and eating. Okay, so you can see knife skills. Knife skills are like a muscle in the kitchen. The more you do it, the more efficient you get with chopping and preparing. And I think about knife skills much like I think about kids learning how to skate. When you first learn to skate, you're unshaky, your posture's all off, you're not very fast or efficient, but you got to learn somehow. And the only way to learn skating is by doing. And it's actually the same thing with cooking. I'm just taking out this little, looks like the core of the tomato. I'm just taking it out. And you can see, where was I going with that? I was talking about, the cooking is a muscle and things. The more you practice cooking, the more your skills become a little bit more automatic. And that's sort of an issue that they've observed in our population, is that our cooking literacy has actually changed over the last number of years. And so that's an issue, because if you don't see kitchen skills necessarily modeled to you, it's something that all of us are totally capable of learning. But it is a skill that's very much learned through doing. So, and you don't have to be, like, this is not about being a gourmet chef. This is not about you necessarily loving being in the kitchen. But this is just about, sometimes we just got to get food on the table. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things that we have to learn how to do. Or as adults, we don't have to do anything, but this is a skill that can be really handy to learn. Okay, so I've got my 2 Roma tomatoes. I was talking a little bit about knife skills, and what I would say is, and I'm in dire need of this, I need to get my knives sharpened. And if you haven't had your knives sharpened for a while, head on down to like Knifeware or any of those specialty knife stores to actually have them sharpened, because a sharp knife is glorious to work with in the kitchen. Okay, we've got the 2 tomatoes, then we're going to use half a white onion. So when we have onions, we've got the root end, and then we've got the other end. I'm going to leave the root end intact. Just chop half that guy off. And then I'm going to go through the root, keeping that intact, and then move that guy over. The purpose of keeping the root end intact is that it's kind of like it holds the onion layer together. Okay, so I'm going to just peel the outside of this. The only way I know how to keep myself from my eyes watering is to be efficient in the kitchen with chopping this up. But has anyone ever reliably found how they can stop from getting the, crying in the kitchen from the onion? There is a little IKEA knife sharpener that works really well for non-serrated knives. That's really awesome. I'm super skeptical about sharpening my own knives just because I feel like I don't know what I'm doing with them. But many people find examples where they feel like that is such a lifesaver for them. So I haven't ventured into sharpening my own knife, but lots of people do. And that's the most important thing, is that you are using a sharp knife. I just got my husband to chop the onion. I get my husband to chop the onion. That's exactly, so outsourcing it, that's definitely how we can help people not cry during all of this. So this is my root end. And what I'm gonna do, this is my guide hand. I'm just gonna create little slits along here. not going all the way through. And that's why the root end, leaving that intact, is really helpful because it holds it together. So I'm going to go like this. And again, you're going to have your own way of working in the kitchen and your own way of working with knives and veggies, and that's totally fine. This is not about right or wrong. I'm just trying to show you how I do things. And then like knife skills is about going at 90 degrees. So I just went this way. Now I'm going to rotate 90 degrees and go down like that. And you want to be thinking about sort of how is the end, what is the end product of your vegetable going to be used in? And I probably could even have made these onions a little bit smaller, just because you don't want big pieces of onion probably in your mouth. Okay, I'll move that over and put that in there. So there's different kinds of onions you can use. I'm using a white onion just because it's sharp, and that's kind of nice in a fresh salsa. But again, let's say you don't have white onions, all you have is red. This is where I think it's important for us all to be just flexible in the kitchen. Is it wrong? It's not wrong to use a different kind of onion. It's important to use what you have. Okay, so we got tomatoes, we got onions, jalapeno pepper. Here's my jalapeno. Jalapeno peppers is, you're gonna have some heat in the ribs and in the seeds of the jalapeno. So I'm gonna go down the middle like that. So if you do not want a lot of heat, we want to take out the ribs and the seeds out. Otherwise, that's going to be really hot. And so I am going to take it out just because just because I don't think anyone in my house is really going to want that. So I'm going to take that out. Okay. Now, with having the heat from the ribs and the seeds, I'm now touching it on my hands. And so it will be really important to wash my hands after this, because if you don't, and then you go and take some dust out of your eye, your eye's gonna be hurting because of all the heat, the heat from the ribs and the seeds. Okay. Okay, so I am gonna remove this. And there's different peppers, of course, that you can use. We're not big pepper people in like hot peppers in the house. Jalapenos is probably the one that I would use the most. Serrano or ancho chili, like some of these they add in antioxidants, but also add in a really interesting flavor. It's not really a cooking method I have used a lot of. So I find that this is an interesting way of adding in flavor. And so it says diced. So diced usually just means small squares. So I am going to go on the inside. You can go that way too, but I find I get more traction with my knife going from the inside. And anytime my eyes kind of water, my nose starts to want to run a little bit. I'm not sick. I do not have COVID. Okay, just going like that. Okay, so we've gone this way. Now we're going to rotate again 90 degrees. And we want to be thinking for sure nice small pieces. And I think my recipe says to use the whole jalapeno, but honestly, I think probably half could be enough in this case. And you can enjoy this as a topping for our bowl, but you could also enjoy this as a topping for a salad, as a little appetizer. You could use this. You could use this as a topping for grilled fish, grilled chicken. So similarly to our vinaigrette, this is a really interesting way, or even in with some, a nice portion of even some crunchy whole grain chips or crackers. So for sure, those are processed. But again, everything in balance. And I really want to see people incorporating more plant-based foods. And when we do that, like, this is how we start, like, adding in processed foods or adding in fresh foods with processed foods helps the food to develop some, what I call breaks, helps us to stop eating them. I grew peppers in my backyard last summer. Time to start the plants. In time to start the plants soon. My neighbor starts his from the little seeds in the pepper. Oh, isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome? So here I am just dumping them, being all wasteful. But that's really interesting. Does anyone else grow their peppers? Oh, I think that's such a neat idea. I do have a garden in the summer, but I don't grow peppers, but maybe I should try. These actually last a long time in the fridge. I bought these actually a few weeks ago and I still had some left. So I'm gonna move this other half over. Okay, now the recipe says to use cilantro. And I'm not a big cilantro fan, but lots of people are. And if you are, you should definitely use cilantro in this recipe. I am gonna use parsley. And I think I've said that in the recipe itself that you can use fresh cilantro. I'm just gonna grab a little Kleenex. I'll be right back. Just give myself a bit of a reprieve here. And give my hands a little wash.
The peppers take a long time to grow.
They do take a long time to grow.
Yeah, I didn't start them soon enough last year, so this year I'm going to start them earlier.
That is so. I think that's really that's just a neat way of preparing for getting out of winter and coming into spring and summer. Which I don't know about you. I'm so excited for all of this.
I'm not a gardener.
You're not a gardener? Yeah.
But I'm learning how to do this.
I think that's really fun. I think that's I'm not a green thumb at all, but lots of people in Calgary are. So I just ask questions and, you learn things along the way. So I've got, you can see I didn't really measure. I just pulled some off. And what I'm going to do is run my knife through these using kind of a rocking technique. So shaking hands with your knife, keeping the tip of the knife on the cutting board and pushing down, pushing forward and pulling back. Kind of like the motion that you'd see in an old train. So down, down, forward, back, like that. And we want just nice small pieces. I am using part of the stems. There's lots of nutrition in the stems. And again, good for the microbiome. Definitely using cilantro is more consistent with the spirit of a Pico De Gallo. I know I'm just using parsley just because it's something I find in our house is a little bit more versatile. And lots of people don't care. Some people love cilantro. And it's actually, there is a genetic basis to this. Some people are super tasters. Some people are more sensitive to bitter parts of food. And actually, for some people, they actually experience cilantro as very soapy. So I've erred on the side of, let's assume all of us are super tasters, but if you're a person that prefers cilantro, oh my goodness, go for it. Okay, so I've got all my parsley there, and then lime juice. So you can see I haven't even added any oil in. And this is great for just a nice little appetizer or as a topping. Another layer of antioxidants, another layer of flavor. I'm a big fan of making your own salsa. Awesome. I'm a big fan of making our own salsas. Oh, actually, I forgot my lime juice. You can, when you're making in salsas, you can use fresh fruit, or you can even use frozen but thawed fruit. So something like, you could make this same dish, but instead of using tomatoes, you could use mangoes, or you could use pineapples. So I'll just add this guy in. Got some nice bright green, bright lime juice there. Yeah. I do have another cooking video that demonstrates how to make a mango salsa, so you can go check that out. That should be in your portal. Okay, so I'm just going to mix this all together. And there we are. There we have it. And so this is something that keeps in the fridge, I'd I'd say probably 3 days or so. Anytime you've got something really fresh like this, it just starts to get tired after a couple of days. But if you put salt on this, you definitely could. But my only thought about that is salt is going to draw the water out of this, so it will reduce the freshness of this if you were to store it. So I'm going to move this over here. So now I think we're actually ready to go back and prepare our shrimp, and because we've got everything pretty much done here. And then once we do the shrimp, then we're also going to do the vinaigrette again. Okay, so maybe what I'm going to do, I'm going to have my assistant come and move the computer and maybe just unplug the computer. Thanks. And I'll have you put it over here. Okay, we're just going to move. Here, let me just come on over here. We're going to move this so I can show you what I'm doing. You can see a little bit of my messy kitchen in the background, but that's okay. Okay, maybe we'll just please ask the host to give you permission to record. You're already recording. Okay. All right. So you might not be able to see me so well here, but that's okay. Maybe we'll just make sure we've got light here. All right. So I'm going to be cooking in right over here. So get my pan heated here. And so I'm just going to give that a little bit of a stir, getting my shrimp done here. Grab one of these and I'll grab some oil. And all we're going to do is saute this. I've got a cast iron pan here, which is heavy as heck. And again, I'm not sure how much you're going to be able to see, but all we're going to do is saute this in a little bit of oil until it's cooked. And it'll be cooked in about, well, in under 5 minutes. You'll see it'll go bright red. And that's like, this can be super fast. You can see I've done a whole bunch of layering in of flavors. And again, this is where, if you know, on Sunday as a prep day, you could do like make your vinaigrette dressing, you could have your Pico De Gallo, and then this might be a nice Monday or a Tuesday night kind of meal. Whoops. Okay, so I'll just add a little bit of oil there. Probably don't even need quite that much, but roll that around. Okay, and then we'll just add this guy in. So I can hear there's a little bit of sizzle in there. I should hear a little bit more sizzle, but that just means I'm being a little bit impatient for how fast I'm letting this cook. Okay. All right. Oh, and so what's amazing is when you cook with spices or aromatics, when you apply the heat to them, what it does is it releases the natural oils from the spice and the aromatic. So in this case, it's like the garlic powder in the cayenne pepper, and it just smells really, really good in here. And this is where I think we miss opportunities to really just enjoy the mindfulness of cooking. So you can hear that sizzling. Cooking very much is a multi-sensory process. Like, and if you're new to cooking, follow the recipe, like follow that closely. But what I can hear is a nice sizzle, but not an angry sizzle. And so if I hear that sizzle getting really, really loud and what I call angry, then I'm going to turn it down. Okay, so I'll just give it, another minute or so. So shrimp has selenium in it. Selenium is a really important nutrient for immune system support. And so we also get selenium from Brazil nuts and other animal products as well. So we've been really focused on plant-based foods today, but adding in lean sources of protein is also can be a part of healthful eating as well. And what I like about when they talk about plant-based eating, you don't have to be vegetarian. You can definitely incorporate some of the animal products, but it may just be that we want to look at the balance of all of that on the plate and make sure we're making lots of room for those plant-based foods, and then also having in the adding in some lean proteins. If you don't prefer to use shrimp, you could use tofu, you could use more legumes, you could use chicken, you could use fish. You can use beef as well. As part of the Mediterranean diet, beef is thought to be about sort of about up to 2 times a week. Let's just give this a little bit of a stir. I know we are in Alberta here, and lots of people are beef. They do prefer beef. I don't have an issue with beef. It's just honestly the portion sizes. You know, I was speaking with somebody who was talking about, you know, when they have steak, they have about 16 ounces at one sitting, and if that's a lot of beef, that's a lot of saturated fat, that's a lot of, you know, calories coming from the beef. And then because it's hogging up so much spot, so much on our plate, we're not getting quite enough of the plant-based food. So the strategy that we worked together with was we found let's just reduce the portion of the steak, and that way he can have his steak, enjoy something that's important to him, but then maybe move towards a diet that would actually support his health a little bit better. So you can see the color here is changing. It's going to be a nice bright pink. That's actually from some lycopene. I was surprised to read that. So there is good nutrition within the shrimp as well. But if you're allergic or you don't care for it, you can I always think about, well, what is this food? It's a protein. So how do we, what else can we swap in there that is more like our flavor preference? You saw that I used a frozen shrimp. You can use, like, if you go grocery shopping, there are frozen fish fillets, there are frozen chicken breasts. And those can be really handy with just pulling out 1 or 2 if you just need a small portion. So, you know, consider using that as part of a multi-level strategy to help you get food on the table on busy weeknights. Okay, so these are pretty much done. I'm gonna leave that in here. And maybe what I can do then is I'll actually just start building, showing you what this looks like all done. So I'm going to start with some quinoa. You can see I've got some nice grain there. And I'm just putting it into a bowl, and I am going to get my IT person. Can you just follow me around with, sure. I'll take this. You move those back to where they just were. And I'm going to grab all the other ingredients that we've already prepared. I've got clients who say, like, they do bowls all the time, because what it helps them do is they just throw them into different containers over the week, and then they can just throw it together. Oops, no, that's just like that. Sorry about that. Okay. So they just put these together in bowls for the week, and that just makes things really, really, really fast for them. Okay, so then I'm going to just take a little bit of the romaine lettuce. You can see I'm just using my hands there. Maybe I'm going to take some black bean and just put a little bit of that in there. So you can see I'm not really measuring. We don't need to be that. Certainly being portion aware is an important part of healthy lifestyles, but this is the kind of food that, again, I find it is hard to overeat on. Now, if you're following a very therapeutic diet, like, you know, something that's a little bit more ketogenic, then yeah, we need to be more micromanaging about the foods that we eat. But, you know, certainly the dietary approach that we really encourage people to take is something that's a little bit more healthy and sustainable. But, you know, when I get to meet with you individually, that is something we can talk more about, is what's the strategy that you find is more aligned with your values and what's important to you. Okay, so I've got some avocado in there. So that's where we started from. I'm gonna take a little bit of shrimp, add a couple of pieces of those in there. And again, just adding in that spice alone is gonna be really yummy. I'm gonna give this a quick little pulse just to make sure our vinaigrette's all blended together. You can see I've got any blender will do on this kind of thing. I'm gonna just add a little bit of that in here. And it's runny because I've added in that water in there. But if you, and that's just a flavor, a texture preference in this house. But if you prefer a little bit thicker, then just leave the water out. And then we're gonna top with our salsa fresca. And I don't know about you, but I'm looking at this thinking like it's flavorful, or it smells flavorful, it smells fresh. And like there's multi layers of flavors. So you've got your basic ingredients, then we've got a vinaigrette, then we've got a salsa. And so, I mean, that took a little bit of time for us to put together, but honestly, I think that's really going to be a satisfying meal. Bowls are great for suppers. They're great for lunches, especially when we're trying to get away from always using like breads and pitas and wraps. Those can work, but starting to incorporate more whole grain in the form of what I call wet grains. So grains that need to be cooked, whether that's quinoa or oatmeal or barley or any of those whole grains, that can be something that's really helpful to use. So I'm gonna move this over here because the last thing that I am supposed to show you how to make is our dessert. And because I'm talking too much, I'm slowing this down. Now I think I've made that whole meal. I've made that in about 20-25 minutes if I'm just focusing on cooking rather than talking so much. Anyway, so the last thing I want to show you how to make is the ginger fried pears. And so let me just grab all the ingredients over here. Okay. My mom always said I was a messy cook. She kind of puts me like the Swedish chef from the Muppets. So yeah, I'm a little bit messy, but that's okay. So what I love about this last recipe is that it's a nice example of a dessert that you can make that is a dessert that you can make that's flavorful, but also has a layer of nutrition in there for you. So I'm going to start with some almonds. Now I said in the ingredient list to buy slivered almonds, and you can see what I'm using is just plain almonds, and I'm just going to run my knife through them like that. It's going to look a little bit more rustic like this. Certainly if you use the slivered almonds, you get that brown skin taken off already. And so it does look nice as well. So I'm just using these because this is what I had. And I actually have quite a bit of almonds to use up. Almonds are a kind of nut that's been associated with a lot of health benefits. It's got fiber, it's got monounsaturated fats, and it's got phytonutrients in them. So I'm going to just toast these really quickly, and I'm going to toast them in my pan like that. Now, when I've done some culinary training, they've always said you should actually toast. You can toast seeds in the pan, but really you should be toasting nuts in the oven. So that's sort of how we ideally do it, just because you do get a more well roasted flavor that way. But I'm also modeling what's fast and what just feels easier for me to do. So I'm just going to put them in the frying pan like that. And it is important to watch them, otherwise they do get away on you and they will cook up faster. Okay, so then I'm going to take some pears. Pears are a lot like avocados in that when you buy them from the store, they're often not ripe. And so I buy them and I like to get them a couple of days before I'm going to use them. And I have served this dessert as part of I did an online cooking class for one of the clinics that I work at, and we did this, and this was a delicious way to finish off our meal. You could enjoy this as a topping for pancakes, and so pancakes is often one of those beloved breakfast or brunch foods, but when we use a lot of the syrups, of course, they're high in sugars. And so another option could be, frying up some pears or frying up some apples, or making a bit of a fruit compote and topping your pancakes with that. And that can be, equally as satisfying and also having in a layer of health there. Okay, so I've got 2 pears. You can see there's different ways I can chop up the pears. If you didn't have fresh pears, you could use canned pears as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I can see that these are toasted just by looking at them. So I'm going to just take them off the grill here and give it maybe a bit of a wipe with getting out the little skins there. And then what I'm going to do is take a little bit of butter. Now, butter is not my preferred fat for cooking, nor is coconut oil, but this has flavor, and that's in part what I'm trying to demonstrate is just using in flavorful ingredients. I'm going to add not a ton of butter there. I think that's about a teaspoon. Turn that down for heat. A little bit hot. My butter might brown a little bit, and that's okay because that's going to give another layer of flavor as well. And I'm just going to saute those for about 3 minutes or so. And so what this is doing is it just takes the fruit and cooks it a little bit. So it softens it a little. And now this is dessert worthy in my opinion. It's one of those ones where when you look at the ingredients, when you look at the recipe, you think, oh, I'm not sure I would enjoy that. But it actually is something that was a really nice surprise of, you know what, that's satisfying, it's got fiber in it, it's got some natural sugars in there, and it's satisfying. It's hard to overeat on this. Okay, just turn that heat down a bit. And then the last thing I'm going to put into it is some ginger. I'm looking for. We'll add in a little bit of ginger. So this is what ginger root looks like. I just pulled this off. And typically what I do is I take a bit of the skin off. Now, I've seen other people just grate the ginger with the skin on. I guess I feel like in this dessert, I don't really want the skin of the ginger. And so I'm just going to take the ginger with my rasp. If you don't have one of these, the box grater will work. And you can see I'm not even measuring this. I'm just going to grate some of the ginger on top of it. Okay, and then when we add and apply heat to that, it's going to help release the natural oils from the ginger and just help that flavor to be released. Okay. So that's all I've done there. And then what I'm going to do, I think if I was doing this at home, I might leave it on there for maybe like another minute or so, just in the spirit of just showing you what I've done. I'm just going to put a little bit of this on my plate. Then I've got frozen but thawed raspberries here. Raspberries, I'm a big fan of raspberries. They have a ton of fiber in them. So and I haven't added any sugar to them. So they're going to be a little bit tart. I also had frozen pomegranates. So I thought, well, it is nice to look at. And then I'm going to top it with a little bit of my almonds. And so there you've got a little bit of texture, a little bit of crunch, and just that flavor from the almonds. I've got some nice cooked fruit, and I've got some nice fruit color coming from the fruit. The raspberries and the vinaigrette, raspberries and the pomegranate. So there we have it. We've got our dessert, which could also be a bit of a breakfast. You can put in a little bit of like a Greek yogurt on top of that too, if you wanted to add in protein as part of maybe more of like a snack or something. And I've got a yummy lunch here, which could be a nice dinner. But all of these things, I was talking a lot during this. Seriously, this could be done in about 20, 25 minutes. This, you saw, I was a little bit more concentrated, and this was done really fast. So when you layer in flavors, you get really, really good tasting food. And I think this is something that I think even if you can always do shortcuts in the kitchen, but truthfully, this is how we find a healthy, sustainable lifestyle. It's when we're eating foods that taste good, that satisfy us, but that also hopefully our add-in layers of nutrition can help us feel our best. Does anyone have any questions before we sign off?
That was great, Kristen. There's not much in the chat box.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no problem.
Looks amazing.
It is really tasty. You've got the recipes, you've got the grocery list and the equipment list, which hopefully these are all things that you can use substitutions. Thank you. That was great. Oh, you're so welcome. I look forward to meeting all of you. And if you go and prepare this, I would love to see a picture of what you prepare. No question. It looks delicious. Yes, and delicious food is what it's all about.
And so check out your channel, right? Check out
go check out. I do have a YouTube channel, and I think we have a link to that in the portal. And if you need more help with finding it, you can go to my website, energizenutrition.ca, and go to contact me, and that's where the YouTube channel link is in there. And so that would be something that I've got other recipes there as well.
Yeah, and besides your website, do you have another good go-to place for recipes?
On one of my blogs, I actually did a summary of other places that, like some of my favorite recipe sites. I've got that listed there as well. Great. So yeah, it's on my blog.
Okay, so thanks everyone